Hello, my name is Melissa Daniels and I have strabismus. And in today's video, I'm going to be giving some advice to the family members of people with strabismus. So if you've got a spouse or a parent or somebody that you have supporting you on your strabismus journey, or maybe not supporting you on your journey, this video is for them, although you may find it interesting as well. Before we jump into that, make sure you go over to learn.strabismussolutions.com, or you can just scan this QR code here. Over there, I have a lot of different free resources, different courses. You can sign up for a Zoom call. There's a quiz, different things to help you as you get going on your journey. Okay, let's jump into this advice. And I don't always do this. I don't like the victim-y idea that it's other people's job to make us feel a certain way. But I also can understand that as somebody who is married to somebody with strabismus, or siblings with somebody with strabismus, or you have a child with strabismus, it can be a little bit tricky to know how to handle certain situations. So as I'm giving this advice, it's not at all this is all your fault or your job to handle this. If you have strabismus, you are the one that's going to be in charge of your own experience and creating the feelings and emotions and thoughts, all of that you're creating for yourself. But for those of you who want to be more supportive, fantastic. You're the best. The first piece of advice that I want to offer, or a little tidbit, is that your part, it's easier for me to think of it as like a partner. So like my husband, um, it's not that big of a deal to him that I have strabismus. And this was hard for me at first because I was like, well, this is like the biggest thing in my life, right? And so there's just the advice is like, if it's not a big deal to you that your spouse or person has an eye turn or really bad depth perception and can't catch a ball, or you always end up driving at night because they struggle with that, like, and you don't care, you're like, it's not a big of a deal, I just don't care. Like, bless you, okay? Like, thank you. Like, that's how my husband was. And that, like, his just like, I don't care, like your eye turns sometimes, like literally don't care. Um, I was so grateful for that because then I knew that like his love for me wasn't attached to my eyes. But on the other hand, sometimes it was hard for him to understand why it was such a big deal to me. And that was sometimes where we had a little bit more like of a struggle because I wanted to have vision therapy and it's expensive and time consuming and it's a lot. And then I wanted surgery and that recovery, like it can be a lot. And so if you're that person who's like, it's not that big of a deal, like thank you for being that person, but also try to understand that even though it's not a big deal to you, it is a huge deal to them because it's how they see the world. And even though it doesn't look like much is happening on the outside and they look totally normal, there can be so much going on like with the brain and the vision, and it can affect so many different aspects of life that they've learned to compensate. But it can also, as like you age and get older, those compensating methods like for reading or driving, all those things, they don't work as well the older you get, and it becomes more of a problem. Or some people start getting double vision and that becomes debilitating. So even though they look fine, or maybe they have an eye turn, but you're like, it's just not that big of a deal, just know that like mentally and in your brain, like with the way your vision is working, it is actually, it can be really difficult. And so just get that, like, be like, it doesn't have to be this huge deal for me, I can still love them with or without the eye turn, it doesn't make a difference. But also I get that this is like so important to them. So I do remember one conversation that I had with my husband, and I was like having a breakdown because I had very little awareness about what my vision was doing and how bad my eye turn was. Just didn't really get it. And then I started vision therapy and I became very aware of like what a mess my brain and vision were. Like I just had no idea. So I was coming to this thing. I was like, oh my gosh, everyone sees me as a person with a lazy eye. Like I kind of got a complex about it. And something that my husband said, and just a conversation, I don't remember the exact words, but the flavor of the conversation was just like, this is such a small part of who you are to the rest of the world. Like, yes, people maybe notice you have an eye turn, but you have like a million other things about your personality that people like, it's just like one part, right? Like, there's so much more to it. And so they are not noticing but I also understand that for you, it's a huge part of your life. So I'm going to support you and I love you and I get that this is hard for you, but also just know that like this is a small part of who you are to everyone else. And so knowing that became like, okay, this is a me thing. I don't have to worry about how everyone else sees me. They probably don't care so much. It's like, how do I see me? How is my brain working? And so that kind of helped me have less of a complex, like, right, it was, instead of like me trying to think about the whole world, I got to just think about my brain for a little bit. The next piece of advice that I have for you is that less is more when it comes to helping your loved one correct their eye turn. And what I mean by this is if you are having a conversation with your husband who has strabismus and you notice that his eye is being weird, you don't need to say anything. um, Most of the time, unless they've specifically said, hey, will you let me know if you ever see my eye turn so that I can correct it? Some people do have the ability to correct it, but most people with strabismus can't do that on command. It's something that takes a lot of practice and work with vision therapy to learn how to control that. And so if, unless they've specifically asked you to tell them, I just think less is more. Just, you don't have to say anything. You don't have to lie and be like, oh yeah, your eyes look perfect. Definitely don't lie about it. But you also don't need to say anything. And I think that that can be really tricky for people who are like, no, I want to help. And if I tell them, then they can fix it and they're more aware. But it can just be such an emotional process. And so every time your eye is off, like it just becomes more and more of a complex in your brain. So if it's not a big deal to you, like, which it probably isn't because you married this person and loved this person and it isn't a big deal to you, just you don't need to say anything. And if you are a parent of a child with strabismus, unless they are like in the middle of vision therapy and in a really good place about, correct, like straightening their eyes, I wouldn't talk about the alignment of the eyes with your child. I would um I look back on my life, I don't think my parents ever talked to me about that. And I never, until I started vision therapy as an adult, I never was like obsessive about my eye turn. It wasn't a big part of like who I was, and I didn't have a lot of confidence issues like through school and all of that. And I think a lot of it I can attribute to my parents. They would sometimes say like, how are you feeling tired? Do you need to take a rest? Do you need a rest? Like, how are your eyes feeling right now? And so instead of like being like, hey, your eyes look weird, it was more of like a asking me a question about it. Hey, how are your eyes feeling? How are things looking? Are you seeing double or single right now? And not making it so much about how the eyes appear, but maybe the function. And if they're at a place where they are like, oh yeah, I'm seeing double right now, be like, oh, okay, is there anything you know how to do to fix that? And if they don't know how, then there's no reason to even bring it up, right? Like until they have like learned that skill in vision therapy. So just be careful about that. I know that if you're a perfectionist, you're like, oh, the eyes are not straight. Make your eyes straight. Make your eyes straight. And some kids can like blink and do something and make their eyes straight. I would just say less is more. We'll leave it at that. Okay, next is to be patient. This can be so difficult because a lot of things, you go to physical therapy because you're having some back pain and within 2 months you're like good as new, or different things in the medical world happen quickly. You go to the optometrist, you get glasses, you can see clearly and it's amazing and so quick. Or even with strabismus surgery, you go get it and um relatively quickly, within a few months. But even that, the surgery results take a long time to come into play. Vision therapy with strabismus is going to take a long time if that's the route you choose. It takes a long time to rewire a brain to go from one-eyed seeing to two-eyed seeing. Like that's just it's like you're trying to remap your brain, and it's amazing and it totally works, but it also is really time consuming and takes a lot of time and patience. And so if you are the loved one of someone who's opted for vision therapy, just know it's going to take forever and they're not going to have quick progress and they are going to feel discouraged sometimes. And so just buckle up for that. Just know like, this is going to be like a big mountain they're climbing in their life. Like this isn't just a quick like run to the doctor and fix things. This is something that's a mountain to climb, and mountains are worth climbing, right? You get a beautiful view and you learn and you grow and you become a better person, but you've got to think of it in that way. With surgery, again, like even though there's not as much that person can do except for wait, you can be patient with them and help encourage them if they're worrying like, oh, is it straight, is it not straight, and it's red and all that. Just be like, it's going to take time, you got to give it time, like we don't know what's going to happen, I know it's hard, but just help them be patient as well. And I think sometimes I see this a lot. People's loved ones are like, well, it should be working faster. Why isn't it working? Oh, this is a scam because it didn't, you're not getting results quick enough. And then you start feeling guilty on top of all the other feelings you have about strabismus. And so I don't know. That's just something that really helped me is when my husband kind of just said, it can take as long as it needs to. It wasn't always that way. We definitely butt heads a little bit more about vision therapy, but I cried a few times, and then he realized how important it was to me. And then after all of that, we realized like, oh, okay, this is important to her. Like this isn't just for fun. Like this is important. And things changed. And when I had that pressure taken off of me that I have to do this quickly and I have to hurry and get it done because he doesn't want to wait, when I took that pressure off, I was able to make so much more progress because I wasn't trying to rush. I personally am pretty sensitive about my eyes, and I think a lot of people with strabismus are, and I just personally don't like any lazy eye jokes. I don't think they're funny. I think pirate jokes are the dumbest. I just think they're so stupid. Like when you're wearing a patch, everyone's like, oh, and I'm like, this is, I don't know. I don't like to make a joke of it because it's something I take seriously. And I can be honest about it and be like, yeah, this is tough, or I'm like working hard on this. But when people start like making jokes, I don't like that. And when I first started talking openly about my lazy eye, um, I had a brother-in-law who loves to tease. That's like how he shows love, is he teases. And no one in like my whole in-laws family, they'd never said a word about my lazy eye. I think I've been married for like 12 or 13 years, and no one had ever made a joke about it. And they are a family that teases a ton. And so my brother-in-law asked, he's like, well, now that you're like talking about it, are lazy eye jokes game? Are we game to make jokes? And I was like, oh yeah, I'm fine. I don't care. I get it. I have this problem and whatever. And then he made a couple jokes over the next like couple times we saw each other. And I was like, ooh, ouch. Actually, never mind. And so I came back and I said, I actually changed my mind. Like I actually don't want you to joke about it. And he kind of laughed and he's like, okay. And he never has again. And I think of it kind of like if someone's weight, or like there's a certain off limits topics to tease about. And I feel that strabismus is one of those. And if you are the close loved one of somebody with strabismus, you are the one that can kind of set that tone. Um, uh, not a few weeks, a couple months ago, I maybe I've told this story on this channel before, but I was the fourth child, and like I said, my parents handled, I feel like, my strabismus so well. I mean, maybe they didn't know about vision therapy and I didn't gain stereo, but as far as like my confidence and my like value and self-worth, like 10 out of 10. Thank you, parents. And never got teased by my siblings. It was all just kind of like, no, like Julie needs glasses and Melissa needs to patch and have surgeries, and like it's okay, like we all just have our things. Everyone was really supportive, loving, and probably a little protective of me. I was I'm wearing these patches, and anyways, so that was always the case. And my sister teased me all the time about other things, and we fought, but like eyes were off limits. And I was visiting her, and she's like 41, I'm 38. I was visiting her, and she had a friend over, and somehow it came up about my vision. So I started talking about my vision therapy stuff. Um, and he was like, oh, that's fascinating. And he's like, so you used to have a lazy eye. And anyways, he just started like cracking jokes about lazy eye stuff later. And he's a funny guy. Um, and my sister just was like, looked at him and she's like, we don't joke about it. It's not funny. And he was like, oh. And I started laughing so hard because like I'm an adult and my sister is still like being the big sister and like gonna go beat up this guy for me, which Like he wasn't trying to be mean. It was very lighthearted, but she knew, and she was right. I don't like those jokes, but I can kind of roll with it. I'm an adult, right? But she just cut it out. Like she's like, "Oh, that's not funny." Like that's all she said, and he realized, like, "Oh, okay." And so it's so great to have if you can be that person who you don't have to make this big thing and write a letter and like this is like so rude, but if you can just be like, "Oh, that's not funny." Like it's so simple, and like I laughed. It kind of made it light. Like anyways, and he never did again. And anyways, so I just think that that's good to know. Sometimes you think, oh, if we make light of this, they won't take it so seriously, and it's just not that way. And maybe your person is different. I don't know, but that's how I feel about it, and I think a lot of people do. Okay, and the last thing, I know this video is so long, I could go on and on about this all day, but the last thing is read the book Fixing My Gaze. It's about an adult with strabismus who went through vision therapy, had surgeries, and she just is like an amazing writer. She talks about her experience and what it was like seeing in 2D versus 3D and how difficult the therapy, like just all of the things, but she's not whiny about it. It's like very positive. I think that when people read that book, it opens their eyes and opens their mind to what their loved one with strabismus is going through and what their experience is. And just reading that book, it's I think you can even listen to it. Um, that is going to help you. All of this makes sense and help you be so much more empathetic and understanding. And I will add on here at the end, like you guys are amazing. Like it's a tricky thing. Those of us with strabismus, we're like happy and all this, and then you send out the eye, and then you're like bawling, and it can be a bit of a roller coaster. So I get that, and we got to work on ourselves too. And I do. I have my confidence with Strabismus course. If you have strabismus, take the course. It's not everyone else's job to make you feel a certain way and to help you feel confident. And yes, they can be supportive and we love them and we're so grateful for them. But you also need to work on yourself and what can you do? What do you have control over? So this is in no way to create that victim mentality because that's not going to get you anywhere. So if you need help with this personally, take the Confidence with Strabismus course. I think it can, I know it can help you so much. And to the family members, thank you. Bless you. You are amazing. I hope that something in this video maybe helped you understand maybe a little bit more what your child or partner is going through and help them as they're climbing this mountain in their life. So have a fantastic week and we will see you in the next video.